Hi everyone! In honor of October being Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month, I'm going to make a video that talks about a family that is grieving. Now what I mean about that is all of you in a family lost someone, and so you're all grieving. You may all be grieving differently, but you're all grieving. And these are just some things that I've experienced firsthand, and what things we looked out for, and what we're doing to cope with it. So that is what I wanted to share today. Now, a big part of our grieving journey is that we very much included JoJo in the whole process, meaning that she was very, very involved. When we found out that Abel was not going to make it, as soon as we could, we notified JoJo and let her know. And then we also asked her what is it that was going to be her plan. Did she want to meet her brother or not? And at first she was very hesitant and said she did not want to meet Abel when he was born, but shortly after, I think it was the following morning, she changed her mind and said that when he was born she did want to meet him. Of course, as a mother already to her, I was very scared going into this process with her because I did not want her to be traumatized or scared. And I was just trying to look out for her. I did ask the nurses what their previous experiences were with children and what they suggested. My nurse, my nurse at the time said that due to Abel's gestational age that he was going to look like a baby. He was just going to be a smaller baby. And that it was nothing for her to be traumatized of, but she said that in her experience she thought it would be better for her to get the opportunity to meet and bond with the baby, just so she can get some sort of closure and it's not this abstract idea. So when it came down to me giving birth, I had a moment where I just wanted the four of us in the room alone for as long as we needed. So Jojo, Hector, and I with Abel were alone. So with that being said, because JoJo was very much a part of the process, she too is grieving a big loss. Now, what I've been coached from my counselor and other people is everybody attaches themselves differently to this particular type of loss. Typically the ones that suffer the most are the mom and dad, because they're the ones who became attached and bonded to that baby stronger than anybody else. Of course, siblings do too, but especially also because of their age, it might be different. Since they didn't physically see the baby, and it's such an abstract thing when you're a child, to think of a baby as being alive even though you can't see them is a very weird thing. And so they attach themselves to that child from when you tell them, but not in the same ways. It's still kind of an abstract idea out there. So they're, not to say that their pain is less, but their pain is not as in your face all the time as it is for the mom and dad. Of course, there's other people in the family that also became attached and also are grieving the loss, but this particular video, I'm just talking about the immediate family. Now, the thing that we had to, I guess, realize, and it took us a while, is that there was definitely, we had to transition from a non-grieving family to a grieving family, which can be very hard because you're already going through a lot as individuals, but then you have to acknowledge the fact that we're all, like I said, grieving as individuals, but then we are going to interact differently than what we would normally would. So we had to make that adjustment in transitioning from a grieving family to from a non-grieving family to a grieving family. What that meant is keeping an eye open, an ear open to things that were going around in terms of our behaviors. So, for example, I could be on edge about something that normally wouldn't upset me. Same thing with Hector. Hector could be sensitive to things that normally don't upset him, but then it would get him really mad. And the same thing with JoJo. She might get emotional or on the fence very easily over things that normally wouldn't upset her. And so it's easy for somebody who's looking from the outside to kind of assume, wow, you know, you're having a bad attitude, or wow, you must be having a horrible day. When in reality, it's not that specific thing that just happened that's upsetting you. It's just your internal emotions that you have. There's just so much things that you're feeling that you just cope with it in the way that you can at the moment. So, you know, you might be really, really sad and you're on the brink of wanting to cry, but then you're also angry and frustrated, and so then it turns into irritability, and you're irritated about a situation that wouldn't normally upset you. So what we had to learn very quickly was, okay, what us three getting mad about at each other is not necessarily being mad at each other. It's being upset at what we're feeling and interpreting it in the way that it's coming out. And so instead of the other person taking it personal and getting upset themselves that the first person is, you know, being irrational or upset or angry, instead of taking it personal, step back from the situation and acknowledge that it's the underlying grief. It is somebody going through an emotional roller coaster and trying to deal with it as best as possible. So I think out of the three of us, I was the first one to realize that. And it was only because I started talking to my counselor about things I should look out for in Hector and JoJo in terms of, you know, their reactions, their behavior, because at the time I was the only one getting counseling, and I knew for myself that I would get really upset at them over something so silly. And then I realized later, well, it wasn't really that is upsetting me. It's just I had a really rough day trying to keep in all my emotions, and this is just how it blew up. So I started to be very key in noticing those things, and a lot of it had to do with JoJo and what she would do. And at first, it was very difficult for my husband to step back out of it until I talked to him and told him it's not that she's mad about the candy. It's not that she's mad about dinner that we're having tonight. She's sad. She's missing her brother. And so it's really hard, believe it or not, it's really hard to make that transition. And you don't want to let things go so easily where that behavior that's in the moment becomes permanent behavior. So you still have to have a form of discipline, but most importantly, above discipline, there has to be a very, very good line of communication. And that is the one thing we've emphasized a lot during the past, couple months, is that we need to communicate. And so when one of us does have that moment of where we're upset over something silly that wouldn't normally upset us, we're like, hey, let's take a moment. I know that's not why you're really upset. Talk to me. What's going on? And the three of us have become really good at being able to do that. That we can step out of that moment and help each other out. So communication is very important. Acknowledging that not all the behavior that is being presented is behavior related to the actual action in the moment. It could be related to underlying emotions due to the loss. So with that being said, you have to really pay attention to people's moods, their behavior. Are they all of a sudden irritable? Are they all of a sudden moody? Are they sad? Are they upset? Everybody processes grief differently. Not everybody is going to cry all the time, but it can be, exerted in different ways. The other thing is to look at other behaviors that can show you that they're grieving, such as their appetite, their sleeping patterns. Those are two major ones. And then also what activities they continue to do after the loss. So if, for example, one of the big ones for me was I really enjoyed doing my makeup all the time and like full glam all the time, and I completely lost my interest in it. I mean, I still get ready for the most part. I've gotten ready almost every day, but it's not something that I'm like deeply like in love with right now. And so you want to look at that. Have they lost interest in something they loved? That can kind of show you that they are grieving, and maybe things that you can do to help each other out. Again, we encourage talking about our feelings, encourage talking about our day. You know, if we had triggers throughout the day, what can we do to help? And lastly, we encourage talking about Evid. We know that the underlying issue is our grief, and so we encourage talking about him and encourage, you know, talking about the different feelings. So my whole purpose with making this video is that grieving as a family is very, very hard. It's easy in the sense that you are all understanding and that you are all in the same boat. You guys are all grieving the same person, so you guys can kind of understand each other, but everyone is an individual and everybody grieves differently. The most important thing that as a family you need to do is be understanding to each person and be respectful to each person. We're not all going to grieve the same. We're not all going to grieve at the same time. As long as you're understanding, that is the best advice I could give, because for example, as a couple, we might be grieving differently. I know for me, I was very, very, very devastated in the beginning of everything happening. And I mean, I still am. I still have my days, but as time has progressed, I get a little bit better. Whereas my husband was very good at kind of jumping back into his routine right off the bat. And for me, it's not that I didn't judge him. I wasn't upset with him. I just couldn't necessarily relate to how he could do it so quickly. But for me, I was always understanding that everybody is different. And so we have to respect that everybody is different and everybody is going to grieve differently. Same thing with him, is he's given me my time that I need and is respecting that I'm taking things slow and then I need to take things slow. That is what works with me. We're also respecting that JoJo has her days and her way of grieving, which is very different from how an adult grieves. Children grieve very, very differently. So, yeah, I guess my whole point is everybody grieves differently, and even though you're all grieving the same person, it does not mean we're all going to grieve the same. And that's the key thing, is supporting each other, communicating, talking about it, and being understanding. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope this video helped somebody out there. And I will catch you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching. Bye.